G'day, hey, hi, and welcome. All right, at last, the long, extremely long awaited review of my SG3 guitar. So let's just introduce it. What are you looking at here? This is a 2006 SG3 Gibson guitar. Maybe I'll do the specs first. Mahogany body, neck, rosewood fingerboard, binded, 22 frets, 24 3/4 scale, classic 57 in the bridge, two classic 57s in the middle in that. It's got a tone, a volume, and a three-way switch that I added in. Originally came with a five-way chicken head knob, which was really cool, but I found it too slow. I found it too PRS-y for my liking. Not that I don't like PRSs, I love PRSs, but when you want to switch pickups fast, nothing beats the three-way toggle. And I replaced the volume with a push-pull pot volume to turn off and on the middle pickup. The way I have it wired is everything goes to the toggle, and because of my impatience, I just wired everything to the jack. So there is no tone, there is no volume, although it's the pots are still in there. But basically, there's the volume itself I didn't put over the tab, and it's just to turn on and off the middle pickup. I set this guitar up more for live playing. Now, this guitar is about 17 years old. It's the third longest guitar I've owned. My first was my first guitar, which was a 1968 Harmony Rocket, which I had for 22 years. And then, of course, my Ibanez AEL-10 that I have upstairs. That one was a year or so before this guitar, so it beats it by about a year. And then it's this guitar. And then after that, I think it's my SG61 reissue at 14 years. And then after that, my Epiphone Les Paul was 13 years. And yeah, so I've had this guitar a long time. It is basically an SG standard. It's the tulip tuners, all that stuff, the tune-o-matic bridge, the neck profile, the heel joint, all that stuff. This is the headstock, SG standard. That's what it is. So if you've played an SG standard, you've pretty much played an SG3. But this could possibly be the best Gibson ever made. I know, bold statement. And this is number 268. They didn't make these for very long. Nitrocellulose finish. I don't know if the camera will pick up those grains, but the wood grain on this thing is just to die for. This guitar it looks soaking wet, and that's just from wiping it down. One thing about nitrocellulose lacquer, just a little tip here for when I got this guitar, it was kind of sticky to the feel because even though the lacquer was dry, it's a work hardening surface, so it is delicate. So you got to be careful with it in a lot of ways. This guitar has held up remarkably well for whatever, considering it's nitrocellulose lacquer. But the more you rub it down with a lint-free cloth, the harder it gets and the slippier and smoother it gets. This guitar is the best playing guitar, action-wise, probably. Bold statement maybe that I've ever played in my life. Like, I've played Les Pauls that don't quite play as nice as this. It's splitting hairs. My Jacksons, they play pretty fine, but not quite this. So this is about as amazing as a guitar can get. And of course it has, one thing, I don't know if Gibson is still doing it, but it has dressed frets like the 61 reissue. Dress frets are so smooth, like it's night and day. Well, when you know what you're looking at, or realize what you're looking for when you play it, you can notice it then. But if you don't point it out to somebody, you give them a guitar with regular frets versus dress frets, they might not notice it for a little while. But after a couple of years of playing it, or even a couple of months of playing it, you will notice just that extra smoothness. So this guitar is just rock solid for sound. It does sound more or less polished because of the classic 57 Plus, and it's basically the same voicing as a classic 57. It's just a tad bit hotter. Instead of 8K ohms or whatever, it's 9. So it's a little bit hotter. So it's not as hot as the 500T. It's not like a Duncan distortion like in my Jackson, which rips your face off. It's just a little bit hotter. But I would love to have one of these keep this in the bridge and one of those in the neck, or take this one, put it in the neck, and put a 500T here, and then maybe like a burst bucker in the middle, and that would just give it, wow, crazy sounds. So right now I've got bridge, neck, both, and then with the pot up, or pot down, it turns on the middle pickup, and then I can combination. So I got a total of 6 sounds out of this over the original 5. So these only came into 2 colors. They were ebony, black, you get, and this nice cherry color again. Look at these grains. I hope the camera's picking that up. The camera will never do this guitar justice. It is a beautiful, beautiful guitar. Gold hardware, like anything, never really holds up over time. It's basically like a CAD plating or whatever, so you can see where, you know, my hand's worn it down or whatever. But it still looks pretty good. You can see even in the bottom of the pickups. This guitar, I've recorded with it lots. No tuning issues. The Gibson tuning issue thing, I don't get it. Like, this guitar stays in tune fairly well. Now, mind you, I've only had this guitar, I know, shame on me. In 17 years, I've only had this guitar on stage once. In a jam night, so it's never really had its time to shine, and it is starting to get a little bit crackly with the wiring and stuff like that. It's time to do an overhaul on the wiring, new grounds and stuff. This guitar is starting to develop some humbucker buzzes and stuff like that, so it is what it is. That said, it's such a great sounding guitar. It's a little bit different than the 61 reissue. It sounds more like a Les Paul than it does an SG. I don't know why that is, just is, you know. But playability wise, man, like if you have to play a 3-hour night, this is the guitar you want. Being all mahogany, it's hefty, but not heavy. The SG standards are, you know, a real workhorse and legendary workhorse of a guitar. Would I buy it again? Well, yes, I probably would. I mean, I thought of I toyed with the idea of like selling it and upgrade them. Like, upgrade to what? You know, in its category, it's not a metal, like a full out metal guitar, and it's definitely not a jazz box, but this thing does everything. And the biggest decisions I have on this guitar is, what kind of crazy pickup combinations could I do with this thing? Like if I wanted to, like I say, I can go like a 500T, which is the hot 16K pickup. It's the hottest pickup Gibson makes, and a 498 or 496, whichever one. I can't remember which one's hotter. Put that in the neck, and maybe a P94 or something like that, and get like a really modern sounding guitar, really heavy sounding guitar. Or I can go Burst Bucker 1, Burst Bucker Pro in the bridge, and maybe the classic 57 in the neck. Keep it as a dynamic sounding guitar. The cleans would be, you know, go 3 P94s in there, making it'd be like a Stratocaster. You could just do so many. You really need like 3 of these guitars. You should buy 3 if you should. Now, why would I say the bold statement is this is probably, especially value to the money, probably one of the best Gibsons ever made? That's an extremely asinine, bold statement, isn't it? Well, it is, but it isn't. When this guitar was new in 2006, I bought it for $1,560 before tax, and it came up a little under $1,800, or around $1,800, a little over $1,800, somewhere around that mark after tax, with the case, of course, and all the Gibson stuff you get with it. And technically, this is a custom shop guitar, maybe not a custom shop guitar, but like a one-off run. They maybe had them out for about 2-3 years, 4 years tops. There's not that many. I think they made like 1,000 of them a year. That was it. So, yeah, for that, you got a guitar with dressed frets, 3 pickups. Basically, if you were the SG Custom at the time was $3,000. Now it's like $10,000. If you buy the 63 reissue, it's $12,000. You know what I mean? Like, no, the average person, I could barely afford this. Now, I bought it like all these expensive guitars that I buy. I put them on a credit card, right? But for $1,560, even by today's standards, there's not too many guitars at $1,560 that will match it for the quality and feel of it, the playability. It really is. I'm not saying there isn't any, but there really isn't. There's not a single Epiphone at that price range that matches this. There just isn't. You know what I mean? And I've played, trust me, I've played pretty much every Epiphone that ever come out. I've owned a bunch of them. I love them. They're great, but they're not this. You know, this is just that much more, you know what I mean? And that's usually what you get with these type of guitars. Now, at the time, the SG Standard was like $1,200 or $1,300. So $260 more, you got this. The small pickguard, the look. Again, this camera will never ever do it justice. It's absolutely incredible, this guitar. So for the money, I'll have to wrap it up. You really can't beat it, even by today's standards. Now, they don't make them anymore, but by today's standards. So it's basically an SG Standard with the, the 57, classic 57s and a 57 Plus. Now, if you were a big fan of the SG61 reissue, like I am, which that's still my favorite guitar of all time, that guitar at the same time was $1,900. That same guitar now, they don't really make that model of it. They make a standard version of it, but it's like $2,500 now. So again, paying for the buck, this guitar is just absolutely awesome. And 17 years later, who cares about the price, right? There you go.